Hello, everyone. Welcome to Global Express. I'm Neena Gopal. This is the new Indian Express's weekly interaction with experts, where we analyze the impact of developments in our backyard, on our neighborhood, on India. Do click on the new Indian Express website and tweet and follow Global Express. This week, we have our eye firmly on the Maldives. It's one of India's most strategically located neighbors. It's a nation of 500,000 people, barely 450 miles away from India, I believe, a tourist destination for the rich and the famous, and an archipelago which sits critically astride one of the world's busiest shipping lanes. This is something that both China and India, of course, want to control. Now, incumbent President Ibrahim Solih faced off against a surprisingly popular mayor of the capital, Malé, Dr. Mohammad Muizzu, whose challenge forced today's runoff in the country's fourth presidential election since it adopted a multi-party democratic system in 2008. This September 30th runoff is going to be a very interesting runoff. We probably know by the end of the show how it goes. But it wasn't just the incumbent, President Solih, of the ruling Maldivian Democratic Party, who was fighting off a challenger in Mohammad Muizzu. It's also the two other, stalwarts of the political scene, the former President Mohammad Nasheed, fighting his old rival, former President Abdullah Yamin. I mean, neither is in the fray, but it's very interesting that they have faced off. And it's also being called a referendum on the influence of China in India. So we don't know who's ahead as yet, whether it's the Muizzu's Progressive Party of the Maldives and People's National Congress, or Mr. Solih's Maldivian Democratic Party. To discuss the polls with us today is Ahmed Shaheed, former foreign minister of the Maldives in two successive governments, and currently professor of human rights and law at Essex University in the UK. He's also served as advisor to the UN on prevention of genocide. Welcome, Mr. Shaheed.
Thank you.
Also on the panel is Mimrah Abdul Ghafoor. He writes extensively on the Maldives and worked in President Solih's government and in his government's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Welcome, Mr. Ghafoor. I enjoy everything that you write.
Thank you so much.
To give us an Indian perspective is prolific writer and columnist, a byword on Sri Lanka and the Maldives, Mr. Sathiya Moorthy, formerly with the Observer Research Foundation, now the very respected commentator. Welcome, Mr. Moorthy. So let's look at the run-up to today's voter turnout. I mean, it's a huge turnout. And as you've said, Mimrah Abdul Ghafoor, sitting in Malé, that by the time polls close, it'll probably be a record turnout. Could you just talk us through that? I mean, the fact that it's attracted a higher turnout, is it because of a greater mobilization of voters, or what is it?
I think heading into the first round, there was always an expectation that this would not be resolved within a single contest because of the sheer number of candidates contesting. So I think part of the reason was that a lot of voters, including some who I have talked to, didn't see the first round as important or as climactic as the second round, where the stakes are much higher, because by the end of today, we will essentially know who will either remain president or be the new president-elect of the country. It's also important to keep in mind that a lot of the grievances against the Solih administration and also a lot of reticence towards Muizzu had essentially factored into the low turnout in the first round.
Oh.
Because it's important to keep in mind, from the PPM-PNC side, Muizzu was not their first choice. It was always, for essentially an year, Yamin Abdul Gayoom is the person that they had been selling as the front runner to lead the PPM ticket, his conviction notwithstanding. However, after the Elections Commission and subsequently the Supreme Court ruled that he would not be able to contest, at the 11th hour, Mohammad Muizz came in as a pragmatic alternative. Yes, exactly. So
do you agree with that? Do you agree with that, Mr. Shaheed? What do you have to say about this?
First of all, thank you so much for inviting me on this panel. I largely agree with what with what Mimrah has said just now about the reasons for the low turnout first time around. The complacency also is a factor there, that that there wasn't going to be a winner. So let's wait and see who we really have to vote in the second round. So I think in the first round, Dr. Muizu was a proxy for President Yamin. But this time around, there's a lot more focus on his character, on his abilities, on what he might do. So essentially, for many people, this actually is not so much India and China, but whether or not a party with an authoritarian past gets in, or a party that has held the traditions of democracy retains office. So there are high stakes now for everybody here that might account for at least some of the high turnout we've seen today.
But are you saying that if Mr. Moise wins, I hope I'm not mispronouncing his name, if Mr. Moizu wins, he will bring in all the kind of repressive kind of tactics that Mr. Yamin did. I mean, the fact is he put half the opposition in jail in the very island that they say that he's under, in incarceration at the moment. So do you see a return to that kind of repressive tactics?
Well, I don't think it'll be of the scale, definitely, of what Mr. Yamin was doing. But what I'm saying is, from the people's perspective, and of course, Dr. Muizu is an untested person in the highest political office. His party doesn't have the credentials of a democratic party that MDP has, largely because that party has been the counter to MDP, representing traditional values, some, if you like, an approach to strong governance. These are elements of what makes up the PPM. Although, of course, I should add, Dr. Muizu has been pledging a full commitment to the rule of law, respect for people's rights. So I think having sort of burned their fingers around last time, I think it'll be a very different kind of PPM government if they do get in today.
So what should we be looking at, Mr. Satyamurthy, in the sense that you have a government which is untested. I mean, as in Moizu's sort of untested point in governance, and you have Ibrahim Solih, who is promised a lot of things. I mean, housing for the poor and jobs for everyone, and all kinds of things which would have made the lives of Maldivians much easier. Why is it that he then had such a only 39% of the vote last time on September 9th?
That is precisely the question. For two things. One, as President Solih himself admitted during the campaign for the second round, the division within the party, and that was one of the factors. And more importantly, the causes for the division, this was going on for nearly 5 years. My Maldivian friends would acknowledge and accept that the real issue started with the speaker's election for parliament, right? Many of us have forgotten it, but it began there, right? Then Nasheed presented himself as a speaker's candidate and it was settled, but it never ended there. One. As my good friend Mimrah said, yes, there was an ego clash, personality clash, full stop. Two, everyone forgot, including Maldivians, that in the 2018 election, as I have been repeatedly writing from that day, all the other parties together got 58% votes for President Solih, who was then the candidate. But the incumbent, even while losing very badly, still got 42% votes on his own. That is Yamin. Everyone forgot, and the Western media kept on writing the dictator goes, autocrat goes, etc. But 42% voters voted for him. And what was it? Two, definitely, despite what President Solih has done over the past 5 years, particularly the handling of COVID situation, people forgot, including Team Solih, seem to have forgotten that was 3 years back. Today, people need money in their pockets. Of the 100,000 youth, I am told nearly 70 to 80% are unemployed or underemployed.
in a tourist
that,
haven, in a tourist haven like the Maldives.
Yeah, no. That dynamics, the economic dynamics of Maldives is a topic for another day. So I'm not going into it. Basically, the problem was even as he was offering a lot of infrastructure, housing, and all that, even in the first round, for instance, after offering houses, plots, etc., which is said to be a major issue in Maldives, as all of us know, why did he lose? I don't think they have really addressed that concern for the second round. Also, because they have made more promises. What they forgot, as Dr. Shaheed said, yes, his constituency is a democratic constituency, anti-autocrat, everything. But they are also a section of them, particularly the so-called Malay elite. The middle class, I would say, they are also very pragmatic about things economic. And the way he has been offering, both candidates have been offering free, what in Indian context are said as freebies, whether it is housing, whether it is salary rise, left, right, and center. 1 year after the World Bank and IMF cautioned,
we'll go into the economy in a bit. We'll go into the economy in a bit. Yeah, we'll go into that in a bit, Mr. Sathya. I just want to go into the politics of the
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, if we can just go to, if we can. No, of course.
Yeah.
If I can just ask to bring Mr. Mimrah in,
that's what I'm saying. I haven't completed. You asked for factors. There are factors that they didn't mention. That's all.
Correct. I mean, right? Of course, the housing,
this year
the
end,
freebies.
The World Bank and IMF said there will be a debt trap.
That's right. I want to expand on that a little. I want to expand on that. Yeah, I want to expand on that, but I want to go back to the politics, the differences between between Solih and Nasheed, if Mimrah, if you can just tell us about that. I mean, there is even a breakaway Democrat party now, apparently, which polled 7.18% of the vote the last in September on September 9th. Could you talk to us about that?
Yes, so the Democrats
and all the various smaller parties, and whether they will play a role in at all.
So going by the vote distribution, only the Democrats are really in a viable position to play a kingmaker role. So just to give some context on the Democrats, they essentially emerged after the MDP primaries held in January this year, where Mohamed Solih and former President Nasheed contested against each other. And after Mohamed Nasheed lost the primaries, he began his own faction within the MDP, which eventually broke away from the ruling group and emerged as a new party, the Democrats. And if you look at the vote distribution from the first round, or the vote discrepancy between Muizu and the president, it's essentially 7%, which is identical to the vote difference between, the vote won by the Democrats. So essentially, it shows that the loss of Nasheed being on his side has cost Solih politically. And I also believe that the government miscalculated a bit, because essentially they had relied too much on the coalition that brought them into power. And they were hoping to leverage the numbers of the Jamhuri Party and the Adalat Party and the Maldives Reform Movement to get past the 50% plus one vote threshold to win in the first round. But as the numbers would show, those parties performed abysmally. In fact, the Adalat was not stayed in the coalition. The Maldives Reform Movement, they are essentially a party that is on the verge of being dissolved because of a lack of membership. They were actually technically dissolved, and it's essentially a legal process that's still ongoing. And Qasim Ibrahim of the Jamhuri Party, while he had been a formidable contestant in years past, even securing over 20% of the vote in the first 2013 election, so in excess of that, he got less than 2.3% this time. what the MDP had calculated was that even with Nasheed no longer being on their side, they could count on the coalition to, on the momentum of the coalition to lift them to victory. And that turned out to be a major miscalculation.
So what about this time, Mr. Shaheed? Do you think that they have miscalculated again, given the?
I think this time the Ibu Solih campaign has taken the challenges far more seriously. You see a lot more energy from ministers out on the hustings this time than previously. A lot more effort by the president himself to speak to issues of concern to the people. But as Mr. Moorthy said, I think he had missed, if you like, the real issue here. The real issue is not giving handouts to people at the last minute, but to address the serious economic decline that has followed the COVID pandemic. People are voting not from the bellies in their pockets, actually, not from anything else, really. So there's been a real sharp decline at the middle class, quality of life and affordability of various goods and services. And this has been the main thing. And I think also President Solih, again, may have missed a major mark he could have gone for this time. A lot of people are talking about the economic meltdown that is up, around the corner, no matter who is in office. And again, in the context of all the promises being made about other freebies. He could have easily said that, him being close to India and the PPM having a pretty bad record in their foreign relations across the board, is in a better position to deal with the economic that will come in the offing. So rather than play to his strength and highlight the weakness of the opponent, I think he's again gone on the line that perhaps by giving out more to people, he would win their gratitude. But people don't vote on gratitude. I also agree with Mimrah that the crucial thing has been the fallout with Nasheed. The critic adds up, but in the subsequent round, he hasn't been able to put them together. President Solih has been caught between two actually difficult situations. He has tried to maintain the coalition throughout his 5 years, and this has come at the cost of alienating both Nasheed and many of the actual grassroots MDP. He may have won the MDP, people in office, but I think he's lost a lot of the grassroots along the way. And the coalition people he nurtured then just left him at the last minute, and there really has been no rallying around him with either Qasim's party or anybody else. And the fact that Umar Nasir, came, I think, fourth in the race says a lot about voter mood. He's somebody promising, if you like, any hardline policies one can think of, he's promising them. He's a very, very hardline character. The fact that he came ahead of Qasim Ibrahim, the fact that he made such a huge ground shows that people want a tougher kind of government than the very soft peddling approach that President Solih took by appeasing the coalition, taking any appointees they would send to him as his ministers, therefore ending up in very incompetent government in the end, and focusing more on maintaining the coalition than governing the country. So I think these have been the issues that contributed politically to his people's grievances. But I will hold my, if you like, predictions here because the high turnout could go anyway. Thank you.
Yeah. What about you? What do you say, Mr. Moorthy? Do you agree with the fact that with the country sort of looking into the abyss of a debt trap? I mean, the numbers that I saw were huge. And what is it that the incoming government can do to even pull back from the abyss? Can you unmute yourself? You have to unmute yourself, sir.
It was sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. See, the economic experts in Maldives whom I have been in touch, they are scared of the situation because the last 3 weeks, because we have to remember we've entered the scene only 3 weeks back, or say 4 or 5 weeks back. They have been going left, right, and center offering handouts. What is the financial cost of it? I don't think anyone in the government or who is going to be in the government, if which is going to be the case, have calculated. I think this is going to push people into a more difficult situation than they have ever seen. Because, as we know, the handout to the pot, as I was mentioning, and Dr. Shaheed himself acknowledged, there is one problem is they don't have incomes. Underemployed, unemployed, or whatever. And if you are going, and the prices have risen post-COVID, for a variety of reasons, you can't blame the present government alone, but that it did not check it. So where do we go from there? And in November, they have to present a budget for the next financial year. I don't envy to be the finance minister of the next government, whoever is the president. One. Two, the parliament is still controlled by MTP. And if we were going to be the president, as Shahid said, we have to wait and watch. But the situation is, he will have to begin with getting his cabinet approved by parliament and parliamentary committees. That is where the first problem. Then getting his budget passed and making the budget. It is going to be a very, very difficult year from now on for the next 3-4 months. But even if President Solih comes to power, where is he going to get money from? Can he continue to print more money and borrow more money? I'm not saying he has done it in the last 2-3 weeks because I wouldn't know, but the country cannot afford. That is a huge situation they are going to face, and whoever is in power and whoever is in the opposition, they have to raise above their political issues, find a consensus thing, and move forward.
So basically, what you're saying, Mr. Moorthy, is that the Maldives could be facing the similar kind of situation that Pakistan and Sri Lanka.
Precisely.
So if we can just go then to the debt trap that diplomacy that China has employed across the South Asian region and in Africa, Mimrah, is this something that the governments have gone in with their eyes open? And you made a very interesting point in one of your articles, which said that Yamin had actually, cozied up to India first when he was in government and then switched sides to China. Why did he do that? And I mean, the sense that you have this India out and India first campaign, which has taken on a whole new dimension in this poll. Where does it leave an incoming government? Will it be India out or India first, or China in or China out?
So sure, just to speak on foreign policy, I think it's important to highlight in the Maldives that campaign rhetoric surrounding India and China should not always be taken at face value. It's very much forgotten in the international discourse right now that Yamin himself maintained an India first foreign policy. India was the first country that he made a state visit to when he took power. And he had actually implored Maldivian media not to engage in unnecessary or irresponsible negative journalism towards India. Because at the end of the day, the responsibilities of being on a campaign and the responsibilities of governance are very different. When you're in power, you have to suddenly deal with the fact that India is actually a very large, very powerful country.
It's not going anywhere.
It's not going anywhere. We are in their namesake ocean, and we depend upon them for imports. So many Maldivians reside in India. We rely on them for consular services. And it's also important to highlight the converse. For instance, when this government, the MDP, they were on the campaign trail, they had highlighted the risks of the Chinese debt trap. And yet, once they took office, they have not really halted all that many projects with China. The one key discrepancy between this government and the Yamin government is this government's reticence thus far to enter into a free trade agreement with China.
I was going to bring that up. Yeah, that's on hold, isn't it?
Yes, it has not been ratified. It was pushed by Yamin. In fact, it was pushed under quite, he took it through quite an expeditious process, to use a euphemism. He had it passed through the legislature without a quorum, without much time to review it. So it clearly indicated that he was very interested in getting this done. This government, the Solih administration, has put that on hold. That being said, there are projects ongoing with China. The foreign ministry building was renovated with China's assistance.
Oh,
We have housing projects ongoing with China. We have had several exchanges of high-level visits with China. So this rhetoric of India out and India first and China is very much played to a domestic audience in the Maldives, and sometimes to a point where I'm concerned. I feel like sometimes the international community reduces the Maldives to being a sort of a piece on the geopolitical chessboard between India and
yeah.
China. But that being said, if a Muiz government does assume power, especially on the momentum of an India out campaign, there will be somewhat of a reckoning with India. I imagine that there will be some effort to do some damage control. But I also don't think, and I might be proven completely wrong on this, but I also don't think that there will be any drastic change in foreign policy once they actually assume the reins of government.
Do you agree with that, Dr. Shaheed? Is that a possibility that they will still have the India and China balls up in the air?
I fully concur with the view, because an anti-India foreign policy is not an option for the Maldives at all at any time. And you already see some language creeping in to Dr. Muiz's campaign, his own statements, which suggest that he will hold back this rhetoric that's been used against India in the campaign. So it's coming down to good ties with every state, more transparency on agreements, and talking about having no basis. So these are all language put in there to make sure that he sends good signals to New Delhi that he is perhaps making a gesture that he would work with them. As Mimrah said, there's absolutely no way any government in the Maldives would survive by taking on its nearest neighbor. The dependency is too strong economically, socially, culturally, and politically. Total madness to begin.
That's true. And India has always been the first responder, whether it was the tsunami. If I remember, I was there during the tsunami and during COVID. And, I mean, and that coup in 1988 when they sent in troops. I remember talking to the then ambassador, MP Menon, about it. I mean, no idea that they were from Sri Lanka. I mean, so it's always had that, but it does have a reputation. I mean, now there is the new charge that Solih has sort of discounted. We're talking about India opening a base, India supplying helicopters, and India maintaining presence in Adu Island. So I mean, these are I'm sure they must worry people. There are 75 Indian personnel, apparently, Dr. Shaheed, that they say are untrained, not defense personnel, but they maintain that sort of aerial surveillance and so on. Is that also something which gets under the skin of Maldivians?
No, it doesn't. Actually, the India-Maldives security collaboration goes a long way back. You mentioned the 1988 operation, and a time when there were Indian soldiers in the Maldives, at government's invitation. The foreign minister's time spoke at the UN on how India-Maldives security collaboration was being framed, and that has remained valid throughout. On Nasheed's first government, we set out the Maldives-India security grid, how that will work. And things that happened since then have always been within that framework. What's been different is that this government has been very slow to explain to the people what's going on. It's become overly secretive about things, therefore risking suspicion. And I think the whole issue is about lack of trust in this government, not about India doing something Maldivians don't like.
Yeah, because the agreements have not been made public. India-Maldivian agreements have not been made public. Mr. Moorthy, if I could just come to you, I mean, do you think there should be a more open discussion of what, the Indian role is in the Maldives. And wouldn't that be better? Because I mean, they're now accusing India of building a police academy in an island, and and that nobody knows about this. And the fact that when the Indian Defense Minister Rajnath Singh came, there was a huge noise. I think a month later or something about at a stadium where there was a rally against against and placards held against India. So is that something that we should worry about? Yeah.
See, there are causes for worry, definitely I agree. But as far as the police academy is concerned, nations like Maldives and others depend on neighbors for such assistance. For instance, as Mimrah said, China built a foreign ministry office. Pakistan funded the parliament house. So there is nothing new about it. It was made a political issue for political reasons, and every Maldivian knows. Unfortunately, not many of us in India know that this is a domestic political issue, as happens elsewhere on other issues. But within Maldives, how could they have been more transparent? That should have been for President Solih to think about. Somewhere along the line, correct me if I am wrong, my Maldivian friends, whether President Solih did not get the right advice on a lot of matters.
Really?
That is my fear. Let me be very honest, and Dr. Shaheed also knows. I have known most of these leaders. Of course, I do not know Mayor Muiz, who may be the president, may not be the president, but every other president, every other political leader I have been meeting and have known them for years. But going back, and the people also, I think the avoidable secrecy may have been the cause for rumors. See, we are living in the social media world. That everyone in Maldivian government forgot. They thought it was a one-way street. For instance, this election itself, first round India was not really an issue. But as Mimrah particularly will acknowledge, second round India became an issue by default. No one mentioned, neither candidate nor their campaigners mentioned India by name. But on the social media, India was there in every which way.
Yeah, but even the T-shirts, right? I mean, Yamin was wearing an India out T-shirt.
T-shirt, India out was okay. Political
and Moizu, I think, has also said that he's going to expel all Indian, soldiers, military personnel.
Never, no one mentioned
not
India
Indian
by name, nor China by name. That's the beauty.
Foreign military personnel.
Yes. So people understood because this campaign has been going on for years.
Yeah.
And that is one problem. And another is, of course, to be fair to President Solih, ministers also showed the documents to 341 committee on parliamentary committee on security affairs. Well, some people said they were satisfied, but to be fair to every member there, no one spoke about it outside. They maintained the confidence the government had in it. But so the government could have taken them into greater confidence.
Right.
That did not happen.
Right.
Mimrah, if I can, yes, please, Dr. Shaheed,
right.
tell us.
I was going to say that, Samut is absolutely correct. I think the oxygen of democracy is information, right? And what's been happening is that there's been lack of information from the government to the people. I know the Maldives is even flawed a democracy now. So you can't manage affairs of the state in the way it was done, say, 15, 20 years ago. It has to be done with some public engagement, some trust building, and some engagement with them. The police academy actually dates from 2005, when Gayoom split the army and the police. He asked India to build an academy, and that's been an ongoing agenda all the time. So, if governments are able to explain what's going on, there's more confidence in what they are doing. So actually, essentially, the India Out campaign is a vote of no confidence in the government, not in India itself.
Oh, that's very interesting. Mimrah, if I can bring you in, the Bani poll survey shows a big majority in favor of the presidential system. There are 64% versus 12%. I mean, so why has that become an issue? I mean, why is Nasheed wanting to change the whole system and bring in a parliamentary democracy over a presidential system. What is it that has driven him to do that?
Well, essentially, as I mentioned in the preliminary to this meeting, it's a combination of both personal ambition and also genuine principle. Nasheed calculates that he is more likely to become the chief executive of government by becoming the prime minister. So that element is at play. But as I mentioned earlier, he is someone who had always advocated for a parliamentary system. For instance, before we adopted the constitution in 2008, we held a referendum in 2007 whether that democracy should be a presidential system or a parliamentary system. And Nasheed had adamantly been in favor of a parliamentary system. Part of the reason and broader discussion about that is because of the nature of coalition politics in the Maldives. So we hear a lot about coalitions in the Maldives, coalition governments. For instance, the 2018 coalition of the Jamhuri Party, the Adalat, and the Mamoon Reform Movement with the MDP that brought Solih to power. But the thing is, these coalitions don't really have any legal standing in a presidential system. And whereas in a parliamentary system, you can only make a coalition with parties that are represented in the government. One of the government's key coalition partners, in fact, their only coalition partner remaining is the Adalat Party, which is a party that has no seats whatsoever in parliament.
Wow.
Which is quite strange when you're talking about a coalition.
That's very interesting.
And secondly, Nasheed has also argued that it makes for a more accountable chief executive who is accountable to his peers within his party and the parliament, who will hold him to account if he's not implementing the party manifesto.
Whereas why is it then that his party did not even back him to be the nominee for president?
Well, they had in 2018, but once you're the incumbent and it's essentially because he has lost support within the elite ranks of the party. Nasheed has been very sidelined within this current MDP government. His role as Speaker of Parliament and even as his nominal role as President of the MDP, notwithstanding, until he left the party. He had been very sidelined over time by this government, which fed into his grievances. Other actors, such as our economic minister, Fayaz Ismail, have taken on a more prominent role within the party to the detriment of Nasheed's political standing, and they have stood in the way of Nasheed's agenda within the party, including his continued advocacy for a referendum.
Yeah, that's interesting. Dr. Shaheed, there seems to be this also in the infrastructure building with with China and India. There does seem to be a kind of a competition. I mean, China has offered to build a connectivity through all the islands, and India to the airport, the island on which the airport is. India has done the same thing. Are these but India has also offered the Maldives a grant. From I believe a huge grant, and do you feel that the Modi government's neighborhood first policy, is as a looking at it from the outside, I mean, do you feel that carries some kind of currency now in the neighborhood? Because it's India has helped Sri Lanka out in a huge way. And and it's doing the same thing for the Maldives. Do you feel that this could be the way forward?
I think India's neighborhood is essentially, essential for its security and position in the world. So all this investment in the region, of course, there is the love-hate attitude of many other countries towards India, which is not unusual in close neighborhoods. But the fact that India has been able to bail out Sri Lanka in the recent times and remains since COVID or even before, the country upon which the country has been relying for its economic sustenance, and across the region, the same approach there. That gives India not just soft power in the region, but also I would say a more stable neighborhood. where there is, no state collapse in the region, at least in the parts beyond Pakistan in the neighborhood, and also keeps away perhaps unwelcome intruders from being mischievous in the region. So the geopolitical dimension will, of course, play into this. But even without that, I think a safe, stable, reliable neighbors is an important element for any country's geostrategic situation and for its foreign policy, in interests.
No, the reason that that's interesting that you say that is also you've said, you've been quoted as saying that there is an element of ISIS and Al Qaeda coming into the country, and especially under Yamin's government, and also the criticism that under Ibrahim Solih also there wasn't really a crackdown. That is a real risk, is it not? That that you could have a fundamentalist element, and some of the parties that, in fact, Moizu's links, apparently his family links with some of these elements has also been brought up. Is that an issue?
Well, I think without referring to the family links, I will park that question here. But in the broader sense, the Maldives has been slipping more and more towards religious conservatism, fundamentalism, however you frame it. And the MDP government has itself been part of that drive through its coalition partners, also by its own catering to, if you like, state religion in its approach to the subject, and its unwillingness to really establish the rule of law. So I don't think the paradox here, of course, is that I don't think the Islamists will win electorally in the Maldives. That's not even a remote possibility, certainly for the foreseeable future. But the concern,
you've called them vultures. You've said, and the people
yes,
waiting in the wings to benefit from this, the vultures, will be the Islamists. This is a bit of a nightmare scenario.
Well, it is. If we have a state collapse, so for example, if you go towards 2023, for example, without the economic stabilization measures in place, and if there is chaos, then people turn to people promising all sorts of, if you like, dreams and visions. And already there is strong outreach at grassroots level through education, through social engagement by these groups, almost with the support of government, or it's if you like, it's forbearance on them. So if the democratic structures of the country fail, public administration fails, somebody will step in, and these are those people who've been priming with their cause for Sharia law, with their cause for strong government, the cause for being anti-corruption, if you like, leaders. All of these things would be what will characterize Maldives if there is a collapse of the current governing structures and current governing parties.
That's fascinating. Mr. Moorthy, if I can just come to you, do you think whoever comes to power, whether it is Mr. Moizu, who's propagated this India Out campaign, whoever it is, whether it's a mishmash of parties that come together in a coalition, what should India do? Should it still continue to reach out to whoever is in power in Mali?
Precisely. India should be working with the government that the people in a neighboring country elect, and not give an impression that we have a favorite there and we have a non-favorite there. This alone will hold us good. We are conscious the India Out campaign was based on the perception. Again, the campaign, Anti-India campaign, as I said in the social media over the past 10 days, is again based on a perception. Why give the room for such perceptions? This is one thing, because at the end of the day, whoever wins or loses today, particularly, the margin may not be too big. So we have to understand that the other side also has a case, one, whichever way. Two, as Dr. Shaheed mentioned, there is this issue of being open on the one hand, two, and fundamentalism, etc., creeping in only, as is pointed out repeatedly, if the present system collapses. Otherwise, for instance, if you are talking about ISIS, this thing, yes, there is a presidential commission that went into it and reported it. But I don't think that it is anything more than in any other country in the world. right?
What
You
what
take
about
any
the
country, there
attack?
is an element
What
of
about the attack, Mr. Moorthy, on Nasheed on that motorcycle accident? Was that an attempt on his life, or?
definitely. Last week, the courts have penalized two of them. But if there is a mastermind, he has not been found. That is also Nasheed's complaint, right? So these are issues that has to be handled by a future government, one way or the other, not prolonging it. For instance, the credibility of the judiciary is a big question today. It has been a question all along, but it was no better this time. That's the saddest. So when a so-called terrorist is arrested, he put before the courts, that question arises. These
So
are
before I ask all of you to make your prediction on what the results are going to be, I have one question for you, Mimrah. You know, is India building a military base in the Maldives? I mean, India has got this. It's looked at the Seychelles. It's befriended Mauritius and Sri Lanka. Further east, you know, we've got the Act East policy, which is now wooing Indonesia. Do you believe that Maldives will play, the same role and sort of agree to being a counter to BRI? I mean, they're saying there's a dockyard at Uturu Tilafalu, which is being built by India, but it's actually a military base.
Again, I think a lot of that has to do with campaign rhetoric. Just to maybe unpack a few of the examples that you've mentioned. In fact, to give a few other examples. China currently maintains a base or logistics facility in Djibouti. The US maintains a facility in Diego Garcia. But these are countries or locations that are quite far from their homelands that let them project power, maintain supply lines. I am trying to think, how would a military official from India even justify economically to a civilian government to build an expensive military facility in a country that is right on India's doorsteps? What kind of strategic leverage does that give India? Assumption Island on Seychelles perhaps does. Mauritius certainly does. But the Maldives is essentially a stone's throw away from India, and military bases are not essentially establishments that you just that you can build for free. There's maintenance costs. There has to be some kind of strategic logic behind it. No one from the opposition has identified what that strategic logic is. But I will also say this government has not done enough to really deconstruct that logic either. So I do not have any credible evidence either way. But on the surface of it, it does not seem to be a very logical proposition to have a military base right there for the reasons that I just mentioned.
Very interesting. Now, if each of you by turn could tell me what your crystal ball is telling you, who's going to be the man who calls the shots, and why don't we have a woman in a position of power in the Maldives as yet? We start with you, Mimrah, please.
To answer your second question first, why is there no women in Maldivian politics? This is something that we continue to disappoint on, unfortunately. Even with the current makeup of our legislature, there are hardly any women. And of the unprecedented number of candidates that were contesting in the first round of the presidential elections, none were women. There was only one woman who was put forward as a vice presidential candidate. As to the second point, I fear I might be cheating if I give you an answer, because I surreptitiously took a glance at the polling right now, and at this moment it seems that Muizu might be leading. But I also think that this might end up being a competitive election. As I mentioned before, Nasheed's party, the Democrats, were definitely in a position to play a kingmaker role. But it's important to keep in mind that Nasheed has not endorsed either candidates. And so he has not. And those votes will, I think, split in a number of different directions. And also, the turnout for this election is much higher than in the first round. And they might actually make a substantial difference in terms of Solih's numbers this time around. But there is an anti-incumbency factor. This is just on the ground. I'm also sort of shooting from the hip and saying intuitively. I think there might be a plausible chance that we might have to refer to President-elect Muiz going forward. But as with everything in Maldivian politics, surprises just keep coming.
That's right. Thank you. Mr. Sathimurthy, if I can come to you, what do you see as happening? I mean, if Moizu does come in, will we see, what do we expect, with his India out? Is he going to go for it?
See, there is a problem for him because in the last 10 days, there was a strong anti-India campaign on the social media. And one of the last speeches was once again, about independence and sovereignty, which in this case, unfortunately, refers to the Indian presence or Indian military presence, or that is a message that has gone through the last 3-4 years. But having said that, and this may have to continue at least until the parliament election, which is 6 months hence. Right? He cannot make a hasty retreat. And if we were going to become president, what is going to be the dynamics in the MDP Democrats? This is going to be a major issue that will decide. And the future of Muiz's campaign, contest, conduct of government on the foreign policy and strategic and domestic issues. I'm keeping economic issues away for a minute. And again, he will have to decide whom is he going to go to. Is he going to go to IMF or the BRICS Bank, which is China trying to market?
Yeah, that's a very good idea.
Or is he going to come back to India or share it between all these countries? These are all the bigger issues, but definitely he will not be able to push through because as things stand, as a Maldivian ministerial friend always used to tell me in the past, if there is some issue in your Tuticorin port in Tamil Nadu, 1 week down the line, we may have to stop. That situation has not changed. 2, if Maldivians, including Muizu and his party, are going to look at offering jobs to their people, China is not the best bet. China, even when they built the Sinamale bridge, for instance, to the airport, no Maldivian benefited. This was also the economic problem in Sri Lanka. It is not the debt trap. One, they were White Elephant project, which Sinamale project definitely was not. But there, for 15 years in Sri Lanka, and through that 5 years, wherever China put money in Maldives, they did not create local jobs.
Oh, that's exactly what they did in Africa. I saw that in the Congo.
Wherever.
Yeah,
this is one thing they have to be. Of course, there are issues with the Maldivians, with Maldivian youth want to do a certain kind of job, which is not there in Sri Lanka and elsewhere. But Maldivian youth have got that psychological issue. Unless they get over it and their leaderships, particularly social leaderships, address that issue internally, whoever want to fund or finance or help that country, a certain element of this dejection will be there in the youth. That's it. The problem is,
so Dr. Shaheed, if we can conclude, I mean, we've got now, so many embassies. You've got Washington, you've got, the British, you've got I think one more, Australia, and of course the Chinese and Indian presence, and you've said that you've written that it could be a problem to have, because there's this sort of xenophobia that is being whipped up. I mean, one angle, but you think that it's a good thing or a bad thing to have such a strong foreign presence in your country? And and also what your prediction is. I'd love to hear what you think is going to happen.
Right, with the second question first, like Mimrah said, it's a risky thing to predict. It's going to be close, I think, despite the early polls showing a huge lead for Dr. Moizu, or largely because the turnout is high. So it would be, higher turnout, I think, favors the incumbent this time around.
Change.
Yes.
Oh.
This time around, only because
Oh.
last time around, the high turnout this time as opposed to last time would be to reverse the last time's trend, I would assume.
That's very interesting.
And that would mean high turnout would mean more Solih voters than Moiz voters. Also because Solih was banking on mobilizing those who didn't vote last time. So I'm presuming that's what's happening. Although of course, the lead is huge at the moment. It'd be hard to close that. Also speaking to the camp of both camps the past few days, I would say the morale of the Moiz camp is much higher than that of the Solih camp. And I'm not saying that is saying anything, but it shows, if you like, the spirit that's gone into this and their own calculations of where this is going to end. But that can be written off at this stage. And I think it'll be good to just wait and watch what happens there. In terms of foreign presence, as a diplomat, I'd yearned to have more embassies in the Maldives, because it would give us more access to communication with them, better dialogue, and better opportunities for collaboration. That remains the case. I think the more we are able to attract embassies to the country, and the more we can engage with them in dialogue with addressing our issues in terms of collaboration through cooperation, that's good. But to the extent that they are driven by their own agendas rather than our own, in other words, we don't meet them halfway on what we should be doing, that will be a concern. So if the arrival of a number of embassies, I don't think that's the case here, but if they are based upon foreign parties' own agendas and interests, that's something to watch out for. But I think in
just one question to you, Dr. Shaheed. Transparency Maldives, this anti-corruption group, has said in a recent report that the government used state-owned enterprises to hand out thousands of jobs to ensure political loyalty. Is that something which shows you that that governments, whether it was the Amins or whether it was Solih's, did manipulate the media to a great extent?
Absolutely. I think the style of the media management was very different between Yamin and Solih. Yamin had a far more, if you like, ham-fisted approach to the media initially. Later on, he learned that he could co-opt them. I think Solih's strategy from day one has been to co-opt the media, and to the extent that in the end he fooled himself, because when the media becomes reliant on government feeds to the reporting, and when the government has explained something difficult, the media can't do it. So the Mauritius Chagos, the letter case, was very much the media being unable to really frame their own narrative or take on an issue, which was nothing. There was nothing, no wrongdoing at all in that. But the government failed to communicate effectively, and the media failed to, build on whatever government then shared with the media later on.
So Mimrah, do me a favor. Let me ask you a question, and then this can be the final bit. Mimrah, you've been watching the polls very closely, and the turnout and the percentage of polling, etc. What is the prediction showing now?
Currently, I'm looking at the website, and it shows Solih with Moiz with a lead of 52.3% over Solih, who's 47.7% at this exact moment. It's important to keep in mind that when I had checked maybe 5-10 minutes ago, the numbers were much more in favor of Moiz, who had a 56% lead, and the gap seems to be closing. So I think this will be a tight race.
Yeah, and if it is a tight race, and if they are actually, like a level, then what could happen, Dr. Shaheed? Is there going to be another runoff?
I doubt very much that is what is required here. I think that's actually, I don't know the answer to that. I think that's kind of not foreseen as the outcome. But I think one ruling could be, yes, the law says that the winner should get 50 percent plus one vote.
Plus
so
one
if
vote.
insistence, then obviously you'd have another run.
That's very interesting. So anyway, I've got all your predictions in the bag. We will see how it all pans out. Thank you very, very much, Dr. Shaheed, for joining us, and Mimrah, and of course you, Mr. Sathiya Moorthy, always, with insightful comments. Thank you very much. We'll wait and watch what happens tonight. Take care. Good night.
Good night. Thanks so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Doctor.